Hello, Riverfront and environmental campers. How are we doing today? Happy Thursday and congratulations for making it to the end of camp yet again. It is me, Roman. We just got off a Zoom call and now you're seeing me in video form, so pretty exciting stuff. So kind of like I've been hitting at all week. Today we're going to be talking about watersheds, and we're going to kind of continue our conversation from yesterday about how different types of pollution end up making their way into our water systems. And we have a pretty fun activity to go along with that. It's something that some of you guys might be familiar with, but for other people, this might be completely different. And we finally get to play with the Legos in your kit. So that alone, I feel like, is enough reason to be very excited. Great. So we're going to start off today with our conversation talking about watersheds. What are they? Why are they called that? What ones are we a part of? Are we a part of multiple watersheds, or are we only a part of one watershed? These are all good questions. So to begin, they are called a watershed is the land surrounding any body of water is the most basic definition for it. And it's called a watershed because the land sheds the water. You can think of shedding like shedding hair, or like snakes shedding their skin. It's basically, and I think the best visual for this is to sort of just imagine water hitting a hillside, right? And obviously some of that water would go into the hillside. It would be absorbed by the plants and whatever, grass or soil might be there. But some of that water would just shed right off the hill and into whatever water system that land is closest to. So that is a good way to help understand why it's called that, because I know that I needed to look that up because when I think of shed, I think of like a shed in the backyard or something like that. I think of shed the noun, whereas they're kind of using shed as a verb. So here in Millville, we are part of a watershed for a body of water that flows right through town. Does anybody know what body of water that might be? I'll give you a hint. It is right outside back of the library. Great for you guys to see out there anyway. But as you might recall, it is Gertie's Run. That is the creek that runs, right through the heart of Millville. And Gertie's Run is actually its own watershed. And there's a great organization in town called Gertie's Run Watershed Association, who we've partnered with before, that takes ownership over, trying to take care of the creek to make sure that we have the healthiest water systems possible here in Millville. So the Gertie's Run Watershed is part of the greater Allegheny Watershed. And I sent, everybody got this image in an email this morning. So you can look more closely on your computers, but I did print it out. This is a map of Allegheny County and the watersheds. And I know it's kind of in reverse because of this, the nature of the video, of course. But we are right here. So this is our little watershed right here. And there's a good chance you live within the Gertie's Run watershed. You might also be within the Pine Creek watershed. That's another huge watershed close to Millville. And of course, all of these watersheds are named after the main body of water that the water flows into. So, obviously Gertie's Run watershed, all the water from the hillsides flowing into Gertie's Run. Pine Creek watershed, same thing. All of that water goes into Pine Creek. And like I said, I shouldn't say, let me step back a little bit. All of the watersheds surrounding the Allegheny River are part of the Allegheny watershed. But some of these down here, they are only part of the Monongahela watershed. No, it's a little bit difficult to see. But yeah, so you can kind of see the rivers, like this is the Monongahela, right? This is the Ohio, and then we're here on the Allegheny. So the watersheds are basically just the hillsides that are closest. The hills because we're here, but any land masses that are surrounding the rivers and the bodies of water. So, as I've been talking about all week, the Allegheny watershed system is part of the greater Ohio River watershed system, which is then part of the Mississippi watershed system. And the Mississippi watershed system is huge. The Mississippi River runs right through the middle of America, down into the Gulf of Mexico by New Orleans, and then of course becomes part of the Atlantic Ocean. So the Mississippi River watershed actually takes up 1/3 of the country. So every colored part, this image you guys got this morning too, so you can check that out as well with a better view and not reversed. So this is, yeah, all of the colored parts of the country here. These are all land areas that are part of the Mississippi watershed. And we are actually up here in the dark orange because that is the Ohio River watershed. And yeah, all these other ones, you know, they kind of flow around from different areas. You can take a closer look. You may have heard of the Tennessee River before, the Missouri River. Those are pretty much, I've never really heard of the Arkansas River, but I would assume it's by Arkansas. And yeah, so that is just a small kind of example of the ways watersheds function and the way they are spread out and designated throughout our country, which is pretty interesting. All right. So we talk about watersheds when we talk about stormwater management. Now, you guys, if you live in Millville or Etna, I'm sure you're very aware of this. And even if you live in Shaler or Troy Hill or one of the surrounding areas, you're probably also familiar that Millville happens to flood a lot. And so does Etna. And there's a long history of flooding in this area. And that is, there's actual topographical reasons for that, of course. And that is because we exist, if you think about, you know, Millville, there's a body of water that runs right through it, right? And there, all around the town is just giant hills. So all of that water sheds off of those hills right into Gertie's Run. And when the water isn't able, because we've built, you know, so many things in town, like sidewalks and buildings, and we build them with concrete, and concrete is not like a permeable surface. So permeable means if a surface is permeable, it means that water can flow through it. And if it's impermeable, it can't. So a permeable surface would be like a sponge or the ground, like soil. And, you know, like I said, concrete, impermeable, not going to work. So like in Millville and all parts of the world, whenever you build up towns and you create and add more and more impermeable surfaces into your watershed, it reduces how well the earth is absorbing this water. So you end up in this spot where you are not, you end up having a lot of extra water, right? So because it basically in Millville creates with Gertie's Run kind of like a super highway because there's not enough grass around the creek or soil or anything to absorb all the stormwater. So instead of having that happen naturally and having the water spread out, it ends up just rising up and then it flows over top of the creek and that's how flooding ensues. So that is a bummer, but the cool thing is that there are ways that you can work around that. And the field that kind of that studies and talks about the different steps and processes we can take to reduce this extra stormwater and the threat of flooding is called stormwater management. And in addition to flooding, a big thing that we have to be worried about is pollution, right? Because like we talked about yesterday with our friends at Allegheny Cleanways, we end up polluting a lot of our water systems just by littering, you know, just by flicking stuff on the ground, not caring at all. And then because of, you know, all of these impermeable surfaces that are in our watershed, all this pollution on the ground gets washed into the water systems. And then we have polluted water that's also flooding. And that stinks, you know? Nobody wants one bad thing, let alone two bad things combining together. What's that about? So what we do is we study stormwater management and we try to come up with solutions on how to reduce the harmful effects of stormwater. So there are many ways that people approach this task. Today we're going to talk about 3 different things you can do that help reduce stormwater management. The first is a rain garden. So you guys can check this out. This is in a Word document that I attached that you guys received this morning if you want to take a closer look. But basically, you guys might be familiar with, because we actually have a rain garden in the backyard of the MCL. And, you know, rain gardens are, it's a very intentional kind of garden where the plants that you end up planting in that garden, the specific flowers and various others, they are plants that need a lot of water to survive and they absorb a lot of water. So rain gardens are great to build if you already have some green space nearby, like we did in the backyard of the MCL. Because you basically just get to it's a way to beautify your green space that you already have, you know, make it prettier to plant some pretty flowers. But it's also a way to make sure that less stormwater is running off from the watershed into the water system. So for us, our rain garden in the backyard of the MCL helps reduce flooding anytime we hit flooding season. And unfortunately, the last 2 years, we've had some pretty serious floods in July. So fingers crossed. We hope we don't see that again today. Um, it's always tough. So we'll see. So there's that. The next thing we also have at the MCL are rain barrels. Yes, yes, yes. Our good friends, rain barrels. Rain barrels, it can really be any barrel, right? But the idea is that it's big and that it's able to catch the stormwater runoff. So usually you can kind of see it in this part here, but essentially you connect a drain from your roof and it goes right into the rain barrel. So instead of putting like more and more water that's just falling in a concentrated area off of your drain or your gutter right back into your yard, that then might, you know, get run off and become part of the creek system. These rain barrels capture that water and then you're able to use it for your garden. So you could have rain barrels and a rain garden. You know, when it's not raining, you water your rain garden with the rainwater anyway. Pretty cool, right? Very multi-purpose. All right. And the last thing we're going to talk about is a bioswale. All right. There's also a really impressive bioswale in Millville up by Mount Alvernia Church. So it's like close to Hoffman Road, if you guys know where that is. I guess Mount Alvernia School. I guess Mount Alvernia is not technically a church. But in any event, bioswales are very similar to rain gardens, except they involve, unlike rain gardens that, you know, they're typically built in a green space that already exists, like the MCL backyard. Bioswales are often put in the middle of impermeable surfaces like sidewalks or parking lots, and are more, it's almost like a more man-made version of a garden or something, right? So you can see in this graphic on the bottom here, to have a successful bioswale, the very bottom of it is like a pipe system, right? And then there's various levels of filtration that go above that to absorb and reduce that water, because as soon as the rain drops, comes down and goes, you know, hits the top layer of this bioswale and needs to go through every different level of this bioswale and each different type, you know, from the flowers, then to the soil, then down to the mulch. They all absorb different amounts of water. So by the time it actually gets into this pipe, there's far less water than there would be if it was just a pipe hanging out there collecting water, right? And again, that's because all of these surfaces take up part of the water as on its way down. So it's pretty interesting stuff. All right, now that we've covered some watersheds, we've talked about some stormwater management, and we've talked about some things we can do to actively stormwater manage. Let's see what that looks like on a craft scale. So what we're gonna need is our Legos, our sponges, our tin thing. It's like a pasta holder. A marker if you want, and our food coloring. So the first step is we're basically, what we're going to be doing, guys, is making a little town that we can experiment with on a small scale, a micro scale. Micro means small. And we are going to see a small example, like kind of like a little condensed model version of what it looks like when it rains with pollution and what it can look like whenever you take steps to stormwater manage and prevent that overflow of water, you know, which can lead to flooding or sometimes it's referred to as combined sewage overflow. And that's just when all of the litter and feces and poop and different things in the sewers, they become so much that they actually block up the ability at which the water is able to pour out of the sewers. So it just leads to more pollution, guys. It's a bummer. All right, so we're gonna start with our pasta pan. Pretty fun, right? Now, we have to turn this, we're basically gonna turn this into a town that has, you can imagine like a hill on this side, a hill on this side, and a river running right through the middle of it. Kind of a little bit like a miniature Millville. It's not exactly what we're going for, but kind of, right? So to do this, we have to make an indent where our river is, It's going to be right through the middle, right? And then we have to kind of puff up our hills so that we can put our little town buildings that we make on top of the hills. So I think we're gonna want to kind of press in. Start by kind of pressing in here, working on this divot. Might press in from the sides a little bit. All right. And then once we have that, you can see how your back, you now have kind of a line from where you pressed in, right? So from there, we're going to kind of pinch to the side of that to make our hills. So kind of go like that. Right? And it's nice to have this tin foil because, you know, tin is very malleable, like we've seen a couple times in camp thus far. All right. And then, so that's kind of one. I know it's kind of hard to tell, but you can kind of see how there's a little bit of a slope, right? So here's our river. We have a little hill on this side. Now we have to do the same thing for the other side. So we're puff it out, puff it out. And I'm kind of liking this technique of almost sort of, you know, grabbing the river from the other side and pressing down. Right? So then we end up with some nice hills on both sides. And again, you want to try to make, they're more almost like plateaus that we're trying to make. See that, guys? See that now? How we sort of have a hillish plateau on either side, one here and one here. Right? You see that? And then a river flows right through it. A river runs through it, you know? All right. And the last step is we want to try to do the best we can to sort of make sure that we can still set this flat on the ground without it tilting, or flat on the table. So you might just have to mess around a little bit, flatten out your corners, that sort of thing. All right. Cool. And don't worry, guys, take as much time as you need with this, honestly. Again, now that I'm still kind of messing with it, I'm finding that pinching this in from the side works pretty well too. We can try that. All right. And again, remember, we need our hilltops to be flat, kind of like a plateau. So feeling good about that. All right. Cool. Sweet. I think this is probably going to be workable. Got our river, our plateaus. Seems to be mostly flat. Should be good for our purposes here. All right. Now, and the next thing we're going to do is talk about a little bit of city planning or urban planning, because that is a big kind of emerging field in stormwater management. And it's basically just the idea that if we intentionally design our cities with threats like stormwater in mind, we are going to have an easier time in dealing with these problems, basically. Whether that be from, you know, when we redesign new developments or anything like that, incorporating bioswales or things like that into what's already happening. So you guys might remember this from junior achievement, but there's a couple different like sort of zones within cities, right? So we have residential zones, that's where people live. We have commercial zones, that's where businesses live, if you want to think about it like that. And that can be, you know, like a downtown Pittsburgh type commercial zone or district, or even something like, you know, Grand Avenue in Millville where there's lots of businesses. And then we also have agricultural zones or districts. And that's kind of more like up in Reserve Township or something, where you have legitimate farms and agriculture that occurs. And the types of pollution that each one of these zones produces are different for different reasons. So we're going to use our Legos to build some different buildings that we can use in our little experiment here. Luckily, I'm ahead of the game and already made some. So for my agricultural district, oh no, I made a lovely little like a windmill type vibe building, you know. Use a little bit of the pipe cleaner left over from before. So I'll put this over on this side. This can be my agricultural zone. Oh, very top heavy here. Maybe it'll be better over here. Find a good spot. You might have to press down a little bit. Cool. All right, this is just not a good spot for that. So I'm gonna have to go back, work on my hill a little bit. And again, guys, you're seeing right now, this is why we have to make them nice and flat. All right, that should work. Awesome. Cool. All right. Now we are gonna have our little, our business district, our commercial district. So I have a little Greed Incorporated here. It's a big business. Big business. All right. So that'll go over here on this side. Okay. And then last but not least, I've got some nice row houses. Nice little residential district. So I'll just put that right over here. All right. Cool. Perfect. Okay. So now you guys can kind of see, I know I'm sorry about the glare. But we have like a cute little Creed Incorporated. Guess the corporations are falling, guys. All right. Cool. All right. So that's our three little districts. And if you guys want to, kind of like decorate up a little bit, you can remember that I did some little marker drawings on here. It's your town, but just make sure that you have some sort of representation of an agricultural district, a residential district, and a commercial district. Okay, from here, we are going to talk about what kind of pollution might happen. So we're going to get our food dye, all right? Oh, and you guys are also going to need, I made a fun little squirt bottle by poking some holes in this and putting some tape over it. But a regular water bottle would work too to do this, or even just pouring water out of the glass, but you'll see why in a second. So, corporations, wow, many corporations are in the business of producing plastics and various other materials that are not biodegradable and can cause lots of pollution for different reasons. They also don't always have the most ethical energy practices, so that's a form of pollution, that we can see and is very visible and evident. So we can just say that that's the sort of pollution that would be happening here, and we'll drop a couple of drops around it. All right. Now in our residential district, this would be more the pollution that we end up causing. So this would be kind of like, there's a couple of pop bottles, here's some candy wrappers, maybe over here some dog poop we didn't clean up, right? And then in our agricultural district, we have fertilizer is a very big issue, right, guys? So fertilizer is chemicals that people use because it helps keep like insects and bugs away from their plants. But it's really these chemicals, as you might imagine, if they can harm and kill animals, they can also harm and kill plants. So a lot of pollution ends up coming from agriculture districts that use these sort of various pesticides and different chemicals to protect their plants. So we'll put some down for that. All right. Now, since we haven't done anything in stormwater management, whenever it rains, boo, it's raining. Oh no! We can see all of that pollution running into our street system. Greed Corporation fell over too. How about that? But look, so because we didn't take any sort of precautions at all, this red water represents all the polluted water that's in our stream. Just awful, right? All right, so I made a second tin just to help speed things along. I know you guys have busy lives. So now we're going to do this again. We're going to take our buildings. I'm going to grab a little paper towel really quick. All right. Okay, we're just gonna wash these off a little bit. No particular reason, but oh boy, it's been a while since I've gotten to play with Legos, guys. Pretty awesome, I gotta say. All right, let's get that back on. Trying to make sure our windmill is working, right? Oh, all right. There's that. All right. I'm gonna get our greed incorporated here. Get that dried off. All right. Get our town dropped off. Cool. All right. Now we'll go over to our other hill that I made earlier. And I'm just gonna flatten these out a little bit more. Should be cool, should be good to go. All right. Now this time, we're gonna do this, and since you guys only have one pan, I would suggest just rinsing out your first pan after you do the first version. And from here, we are going to talk about, sorry, I had to get Green Incorporated back. What kind of styles of stormwater management we could do. So this is where we're going to go into our sponges. We are going to have, let's say, our blue sponges. These can be rain gardens. Remember from before, rain gardens are blue. We can do green, can be bioswales, green and yellow. And we can do rain barrels can be pink. So part of what we have to do is figure out which style of stormwater management would go best with each district, right? And there's multiple answers to this. So I'd be curious to see, if you guys want to set it up however you want, I'm okay with that, as long as you have a reason to explain how it could work in real life. So for me, I think that with my residential district, it would make the most sense to do some rain gardens. And that's because the residential district has, kind of some green space already as a part of it, right? And also think about placement too, guys. Obviously, I think it kind of makes sense that if we were in a situation like this where all the districts are bordering the river, we would want to put the rain gardens closest to the river, right? We'll do this. Seems good. All right. Do. Get that going. Very cool. All right. Now next, let's see. For agriculture, I personally kind of like the idea of doing some rain barrels because we have crops we're going, so if we can harvest that water, it's going to save us water. And, that water would have to be distilled another level for us to drink right out of the sky. But for the plants, it's good to go. They're drinking rain all the time. So we'll go ahead, we'll put this there. Right on top like this. And lastly, for Green Incorporated, they probably have a bunch of parking lots for all of their CEOs who have really nice cars at Green Incorporated, So in the middle of that, we're just going to plop some bioswales, We're going to take care of our planet here. It would probably take the city voting on this to get this to happen, and that's cool. Democracy is powerful. All right. Now, this might not be perfect, but let's just see if this helps at all with reduce the amount of color we get in from our pollution. So remember, Green Incorporated, they use bad energy, they produce non-biodegradable products. So that's what their pollution is. Remember, we got our agriculture, pesticides, going all over the place. So that's there. All right. And then lastly, humans, residential litter, pop cans, candy wrappers, water bottles, all flowing. All right. Okay, so this time we actually did some stormwater management. We took some steps. Let's see if it helps reduce the pollution. Well, we're still getting some runoff, but some of it isn't polluting at all. Look, you can even see the sponges getting darker because that's like them catching the pollution. Oh no! Our agricultural district really had a hillslide there. And even Green Corporation, there's still some, but not quite as much. So I know that's just a silly little experiment, but I think you guys can understand what we're trying to say here, right? Taking these steps, even if they're gradual, even if the change is incremental, really, really helps in reducing the stormwater management. So from here, I encourage you guys to build away, do this as many times as you want, try as many combinations as you can, and see how if you can get it to being to a perfect point where there's no pollution at all that is runoff. So that's that, guys. That's watersheds and stormwater management. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys about this. I hope you enjoy it. And at the very least, enjoy playing with your Legos. All right, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.